Selamat pagi. Can you guess which brother is me? Not the tall one, unfortunately. No, not the middle one either. The tiny one on the end. I stayed kind of tiny all throughout high school, so naturally, I didn't like team sports. I didn't want to get crushed by the giant football and rugby lads. But there was something else. Mentally, I also didn't fit in with that crowd. See, they seemed to enjoy this aggression and anger that they had towards their opponents. It was part of the game for them. And I just never felt that way, even though I was competitive. At university, my housemate, she knew this about me. And she put one of these in my hand. And she said, "Why don't you join the ultimate frisbee team?" Frisbee? That's for dogs, isn't it? No. It's a sport, she said. Go on, give it a try. I think you'll be surprised. So, the next day, I did give it a try. And I was surprised. And it changed my life. This picture was taken last year in Jakarta when I was playing for a team mostly made up of high school kids. You see, I didn't have ultimate frisbee in my own high school all those years ago, so I'm kind of making up for it now. I am passionate about what this sport can do for young people. And over the next 15 minutes, I'll be explaining to you how this sport changes the way that we understand competition and conflict. Last year, a New York Times journalist wrote an article about ultimate frisbee. She said, "I was watching the football soccer World Cup with its flopping and shirt pulling and endless deceptions. Ultimate frisbee seems to belong to a whole different universe." A whole different universe, she said. It's a pretty bold statement. And we all know there are numerous benefits to playing sports. Keeping fit, making friends, and ultimate frisbee is no different in that sense. So why would this journalist say it belongs to a whole different universe? Before we get into that, I'm going to show you a video of how the game actually works so you can have some context. Let's take a look.
Wide open too. Now they go into traffic. Oh, lay on D from Madison's Jay Frude. Rushing it deep for Lloyd. What a play by Mark Lloyd. That was ridiculous.
American Ultimate Disc League. And look at the diving catch from Nick Hutton.
I'd be surprised if this thing's in here. AUDL top 10. It was so sick. But when you watch this, I take back everything I said.
So, as you can see, like other sports, it has running, jumping, catching, and throwing. But there is one unique element about ultimate frisbee that does make it stand out, and it is a game changer. You see, in most sports, there are referees, there are judges, there are umpires who will make difficult decisions, and ultimately they decide who is right and who is wrong. And that system works. But imagine a sport where the players themselves are the referees. They have to make those difficult decisions. In a competitive sport, the players are self-refereed. It might seem Unrealistic? But this system also works, and it has an amazing impact on its players. This sport teaches its players from the outset that you can be completely competitive and completely compassionate at the same time. You can form lifelong friendships not only with your teammates, but with opponents and rivals. You can fully commit to being the best at something and then applaud those who end up better than you. Imagine mastering those skills and applying them to all areas of your life. This idea may have come from imagination, but it is now a reality. And ultimate, we call it the spirit of the game. In those first few sessions at university, I was drawn in by this idea of competition and spirit. And I'm not alone. After 50 years since its invention, there are now tens of millions of players worldwide in hundreds of countries. There are more and more divisions cropping up. Under 24s, under 20s, under 14s, men's, women's, mixed gender, high school, college, professional. In fact, the Olympic Committee has recognized ultimate frisbee as a future Olympic sport. Governments are supporting its development through education, and NGOs are using it for peacekeeping, even in such conflicted areas as Israel and Palestine. The impact of this idea is massive and can now be felt around the globe. The clip we saw earlier gives you an idea of the fitness involved. It is intense and exhausting. In fact, when the Australian Football League tested 150 female athletes from a range of different sports, three of those athletes were ultimate players. And all three of them ended up in the top 10 out of 150. So the level of intensity and commitment that players show to this sport makes the idea of spirit of the game and self-refereeing even more impressive when they're so committed and want to win so badly. But you see, spirit of the game is not just encouraged. It's written into the rules. In fact, it's the number one rule in the ultimate rule book. The rule states that highly competitive play is encouraged, but never at the expense of mutual respect among competitors. Highly competitive, but mutual respect. Just picture this for a second. It's the final of the World Championships. You've been preparing for months, if not years, to get to this point. Everything is on the line. It's sudden death, the final point. You are exhausted. Your team is on offense. You're running into the end zone. You're about to score the winning goal. And then an opponent calls a foul and stops the game. How can you remain non-biased, non-aggressive, and fair in that situation? If you're a competitive person, you know how challenging that would be. So, any player can stop the game if they call a foul. How does that system work? Why don't players just abuse this system to win? I don't want you to score, so I stop the game and call a foul, right? These were questions I was asking myself at university when I first started playing. But the system works. And I believe there are 3 reasons. Number 1, have you noticed how people love to blame authority? Students in the audience probably blamed your parents or your teachers. Employees blaming their bosses. But if you give people real responsibility and they own it, they respect it, they will often show you their best side. I'd like to see a show of hands from the audience. How many of you have older siblings? Quite a few of you, just like me. Maybe you can relate. See, when my parents went out, they would put my oldest brother in charge, which I wasn't happy about, but that's the way it was. And I have to admit, he did a pretty good job. He looked after us. He was responsible. I cut my leg one day, really badly, and he knew what to do. But when my parents came back and they were in charge, suddenly he would become a child again. He would misbehave and he'd throw tantrums. Strange, isn't it? The same thing happens on the frisbee field. All the players are responsible. They are all in charge. And therefore, generally, they behave. This responsibility also leads to less aggression because you don't have to shout and prove your point at a higher authority. You just have to discuss and convince a player with equal authority to you. I'd like to show you an example of a foul being called. This is a high-level game, the US semifinals. It's a pretty big deal. I won't talk much about the rules of Ultimate, but one rule you should know is there's no contact between players. In this case, the thrower in white believes the defender in blue made contact. That guy in orange, he's not a referee, he's an observer. So he can give advice, but basically the players don't have to take that advice. Let's see what happens.
Everyone was in awe of the fact that Fury was absolutely taking over, and there was nothing that Riot could do about it.
Oh, Kaler fouled the thrower on the mark. Charlie Mercer. Believes it was a foul.
I think that we had contact on my throwing motion, and you hit disc cleanly after.
Okay, I think I hit this first and the motion happened after, so I'm going to contest them.
Okay, do you want to leave it as a foul contest, or do you want to come to me for a ruling?
I'll defer to you on that one.
Okay, we're going to leave it as a foul contest.
A diplomatic sequence between Mercer and Kaler.
Okay. So, it was a quick resolution. The players disagreed, but there was no aggression and no anger. Now, there are different ways to resolve a foul call depending on if the players agree or not. But in this case, it's not important to figure out, did it happen? What we're looking at is the way the players discuss it, the way they resolve the situation. We disagree with others all the time in life, with our friends, with our colleagues, with our partners. Imagine if we could resolve every dispute the way these athletes do, even when our emotions are running high. Some of you might be thinking, oh, they just don't care about winning. They do care. In fact, wanting to win is also spirited because you're showing respect to your opponents. The second reason why this system works, the self-refereeing system, is what my friend calls mobservation. I'd be lying if I said it was never tempting to try and cheat. But apart from knowing that we shouldn't, when there are 14 players, 14 pairs of eyes watching you, it actually becomes really difficult because someone's going to see and someone's going to stop the game. So it's not really worth it if you want the game to continue. But the final and most important and most exciting reason that this system works, and the one why it's so beneficial for our young players, is herd mentality, positive peer pressure. You see, no team wants the foulers. No team wants the fakers who always pretend to get fouled. It's just too disruptive. The game would stop every 2 minutes. And ultimately, everyone enjoys the game less. So players are pressured to act responsibly. They are pressured to be respectful by their peers. And to develop this way of thinking at a young age has incredible benefits. Children who have always been told what to do, what is right, what is wrong, don't do this, don't do that, they suddenly have all this responsibility. Isn't it great when a child does something wrong and they choose to admit it and apologize, instead of a parent or a teacher finding out and saying, "Now go and say you're sorry." At first, young people don't like this responsibility. They feel uncomfortable with it. A foul will happen, and they'll spread their arms out wide and go, "Referee!" Oh, I'm the referee. Slowly, they learn to embrace it. They learn to take a step back and be objective. They learn to resolve conflict quickly and fairly. They learn to lose with their heads held high and congratulate those who beat them. And they learn to win by playing by the rules and the satisfaction that comes with it. I've seen it firsthand. As a board member of the Indonesian Ultimate Players Association, I have had the privilege of taking young high school students from Jakarta to Malaysia and to Bali for tournaments. And they've grown so much as people. And then they come back and they spread Ultimate and its ethos back home. And that's what's so super exciting. You see, the skills they learn are not just applicable on the Ultimate field. They can apply them in their jobs, in their careers later after university, even in their relationships. I know I have. This positive culture is infectious. It spreads from players to non-players, helping to empower other local voices. Those local voices, infused with the spirit of the game mentality, are heard by their friends and their parents, and eventually their own children. Imagine if whole countries and their leaders could deal with conflict and competition the way Ultimate players do. Is it too much to ask? I don't think so. Is it really a whole different universe? It doesn't have to be. Thank you for listening.